In this video, I will show you how you can enable cross-domain tracking in Google Analytics. Many businesses have multiple sites. Usually, they operate as separate businesses. However, in many cases, you might have a deeper linking between those domains and want to track a user as the user goes from one domain to the other domain. The most common example of cross-domain tracking is when you have your e-commerce experience on a third-party site. So you have your main site where user is looking at your product details, etc. But when the time comes to make the purchase, they are taken to a third-party site. However, you do not want to track that experience separately. You want to bring the complete user experience on your site as well as the shopping cart of the third party into one Google Analytics view. This is where cross-domain tracking helps. Just like cross-domain tracking, subdomain tracking also has two issues. Let's take an example where I have these two domains, optizen.com and globalanalyticsacademy.com. A user can go between these two domains. However, I want that user to be counted as one user, not two separate users. In order to do that, I have to put the same tracking code on these two domains. However, just like subdomain tracking, we still have two issues. Let's revisit and see what those issues are. First is the cookie issue. When a user lands on globalanalyticsacademy.com, a cookie is set to track that user. Then the user clicks to go to optizen.com, a new cookie is set to track that user because both of these domains are separate. Even when the data is tracked in same Google Analytics property, now you got two cookies, hence two users. So even though it's the same user, it's counted twice. And second issue is the referrer information. When a user lands on Global Analytics Academy, let's say from an email campaign or any other source, referrer is set to that particular source. When the user clicks to go to optizen.com, referrer is now set to globalanalyticsacademy.com. As soon as a new referrer is seen, Google Analytics counts that as a new session. So you've got two users with two sessions and two different referrers. All these problems can be solved by properly setting cross-domain tracking. Before I show you the solution, let me show you the exact scenario that we are going to look at. So here I'm in Google Analytics. As you can see, there is 0 active user on this site. Now I'm going to go to Google and search for Global Analytics Academy. So I go here. I have already searched for Global Analytics Academy, and I'm going to click on our courses. So click on it and go back to Google Analytics. And here you can see one active user on our courses. I'm going to go back to our courses and click on a link that takes me to optizen.com. Here I'm on optizen.com. Let's go back to Google Analytics. Here you can now see two active pages, and then you have top referring source as Global Analytics Academy, and the first one was from Google. So let me go to traffic sources. So you can see organic, Google, one user, and referral from Global Analytics Academy, one user. So even though I'm one user jumping from one domain to another, I'm being counted as two users in Google Analytics and two different referring sources are being shown. What I really want to do is count this user as one user, even when the user is jumping across these domains, so that I can see the comprehensive user journey in Google Analytics. So that's what we're going to fix. Once we fix it, I'll come back and show you how it looks in your Google Analytics data. I'm going to show how to set it up with or without Google Tag Manager. First, we will look at Google Tag Manager. If you do not have Google Tag Manager implementation, then you can skip over it and go to where I explain how to do this without Google Tag Manager. So let's first take a look at Google Tag Manager implementation. So the steps that we are going to take are very similar to what we did for subdomain tracking. So first, go to variables. You should have a Google Analytics ID variable. Click on it. And this is where we're going to make a change. So click on this, scroll up and click on more settings. You already have the cookie domain set to auto. Another thing that you have to do is go to field to set, add a field and select allow linker. Set the value to true. This allows Google Analytics to pass tracking information and cookie information between the domains as a user clicks on a link on one domain to go to another. By setting the allow linker to true, Google Analytics automatically appends this tracking information in the query string when user clicks on a link on one domain to go to the other linked domain. By doing so, Google Analytics will be able to stitch the information together and provide a comprehensive view of that user's journey. Another thing that you have to do is to list which domains you want to link together. So go down and click on cross-domain tracking. This is where you write the list of domains that you want to link together. You separate the list of domains by a comma. You can type in all the domains right here, or you can even create a variable with the list of those domains and then use that variable. So let's go ahead and type those. Those are the two domains that I'm linking right now. As I mentioned before, the query parameter that links the two domains together is passed via query string. If for some reason you want to use an anchor tag instead of the query parameter, which appears after a question mark in the URL, then you will use true here. So that means use hash instead of the query parameter. However, in most of the cases, you won't need to use that. So leave it as false. And finally, if the domains have forms that after submission takes the user to another domain, you also have to select decorate forms as true. This is like allowing the linker, which works for links, and this here works if you have the forms as well. Once done, go ahead and click on save. Now your Google Analytics tracking ID variable is ready. Use this variable whenever you have to fire any Google Analytics tag. So let's go take a look at a tag here. Here I have a GA page view. Click on it. And as you can see, I'm using that variable. Click on X here and make sure to submit your changes. Cross domain tracking. You can put a description here as well and publish it. Now your Google Tag Manager setup is ready. Before I proceed to the next step, which are common, whether you are using Google Tag Manager or not, I want to show how the implementation is done if you are not using Google Tag Manager. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Your analytics code should look something like this, where this number represents your property or tracking ID. In order to enable cross-domain tracking, there is a slight change that you need to make to your tracking code on every domain that you have, and your changes will look like this, where the content in green shows the changes that you need to make. First, you put the names of the domains that you want to cross-link. Then you have two optional parameters. The first one, decorate forms, tells Google Analytics whether you want to use cross-domain tracking for forms or not. If your form is going to be submitted from one domain and takes the user to another domain, then you'll set it to true, else mark it as false. If you ignore this parameter, then the default value is taken as false. And then finally, you have the URL position, which specifies how do you want the tracking code to be passed between those two domains. By default, it's passed as a query string. However, if you do not want to use query string and want to use an anchor tag, then use fragment. Both these last parameters are optional, but if you are going to use URL position, then you have to set the value for decorate forms as well. I generally mark decorate forms as true to take care of any forms that you might add in future. And URL position to query or completely ignore it. And that's all. Make sure to put this code on every single domain that you want to track in cross-domain tracking. Once these changes are done, then we can move on to making the changes to Google Analytics. Just like what we did in subdomain tracking, we have to also set up referral exclusions in Google Analytics for cross-domain tracking. Go to Google Analytics and to the admin section of your property. And under tracking info, click on referral exclusion list. This is where you are going to also type in Global Analytics Academy. What this does is tells Google Analytics to ignore this domain as a referral source if a user is coming by clicking on any link or submitting a form on this domain. So go ahead and save it. So now we got optizen.com and globalanalyticsacademy.com as the domains that will not be counted in referral. This way you can have the accurate referral information. That is the referral where the user came from to either of these domains before going back and forth on these domains. And now you're done. Let's go back to real time. Overview. Right now, 0 users. So I'm going to do the same process again and see how this works. I am going to go to Google and search for Global Analytics Academy. And here I am. I have already searched for Global Analytics Academy. I'm going to click on our courses. As I go to our courses, let me go back to Google Analytics. Here you can see 1 user and the top active page, which is our courses. And traffic source is organic Google. Now I'm going to go back to Global Analytics Academy and click on online courses. So here's the page which is on Optizen. One additional thing I want to show you here is the effect of allow linker. Remember we set that value to true. This is what happens when you click on a link. I'm going to try to scroll this window a bit down so you can see it. Here it is. So as you can see in this URL bar, Google Analytics is also appending a little tracking info. This is the info that gets passed between the domains to sync the cookies on those 2 domains so that the user can be counted as 1 user across those domains. So now I'm going to go back to Google Analytics to see we still have 1 active user. Overview is right here. And now the active page is online courses and still 1 user, and traffic source is organic. So we have successfully implemented cross-domain tracking in Google Analytics.